The Crown Matrix. World 2. The Queen's Crown. My name is Jonathan. I work with Phoebe, a rainbow phoenix, to explore the multiverse. I had to leave my old life as a soldier in what could possibly be one of the biggest wars in the world, just to help her. Phoebe wasn't her name though. I just called her that. I walked up to the phoenix and she nodded at me.
"Morning, young human,"
she said. "Morning. Let's get on with it, shall we?" I blurted, knowing full well that I was about to be burnt to death. Phoebe then presented the tarot deck before me. I knelt down and the 3 cards landed in front of me. I picked the one that had a baby in a womb on it. Then I held the card to my chest. Phoebe opened her wings, her feathers ignited. The card in my hand burst into rainbow flames. The flames engulfed me and my body burned away. The skeleton burned away. My soul left the remains as my body was turned to ash.
I woke up in darkness. I squirmed but was unable to move. I struggled to make any kind of movement, but each time nothing happened. As I began to give up, I could hear voices, and one of them said, "Are you sure we should be doing this?" Another responded, "John, you read the transmission. Mr. Burke wants us to investigate the ship." The one, identified as John, said, "Yeah, Ace, but this feels wrong. It just seems dangerous." "Yeah, but think about it. Depending on what's in here, we could be rich. Maybe even get off this rock," the one named Ace responded. Then as I listened to them argue, I felt air coming from above me. I squirmed some more and was able to shift my position. I then crawled upwards towards it. My legs pulled me out of an opening. I could sense this was my egg. As I stood there perched on the egg, I could hear the 2 say, "Oh, what the hell is that thing?" I sensed the 2 bodies as my urges told me. "Increase the swarm." I leapt from where I was perched on my egg towards the closest one and landed on its face. I then held myself against it and wrapped my tail around its neck as I began to secrete my chemical into its skin. Then the other voice screamed, "John, oh my God!" I began to insert my proboscis into its mouth. As my prey squirmed for a moment, my chemical began to take effect and the host began to go still. The one known as Ace attempted to pull me off of my prey, but my hand-like legs and tail were firmly secured around the head of John. I then began the long process of delivering the embryo, as I could feel my prey being dragged by the other one. The air all around me began to feel colder as we were being pulled by Ace, who said, "Oh my God, this is bad. Don't worry, John, I'll get you some help." Soon I felt the air no more as my host and I were still being drugged. After a few moments, I could hear more voices, one of them saying, "Ace, what happened? What the hell is that on his face?" The one known as Ace frantically responded, I don't know. We saw the transmission from Mr. Burke's, so we snuck out and went to look at the ship. Then this thing came out of an egg and just lashes onto John's face." One of the other voices said, "We'll deal with you 2 later. Someone send a team to investigate that ship to figure out what the hell this thing is. I'm going to try and get it off of him." I heard shuffling noises and soon felt cold against my leg as something began to cut me. I felt the pain but remained firmly attached. My acidic blood began to pour out of the wound. I then heard the voice say, "The thing's blood just melted my scalpel. It's like sulfuric acid." The voices stopped as I heard the sound of them leaving the room. As we lie there, I used the sacs on the sides of my body to breathe for the host, keeping him alive while I implanted the embryo as I could hear the voices outside talking. Hours later, I could tell that my embryo was implanted into the host, and my job was done. I then began to feel strange as my grip loosened, and my life functions began to cease. I then soon fully released my grip and fell to the hard floor as everything went black again. Everything then shifted as I could hear voices again. This time was different, but everything was still dark. But I was surrounded by organs and other internal body parts. I heard what must be my host saying, "I don't know what happened, Doc. It just fell off and died." "John, we don't know what that thing was, but we need to keep you here for observation until the team gets back from that ship," the outer voice said. As the voices stopped, I began to move, and I could feel and see my host wincing as it yelped in pain. I heard it call out, "Doctor, please, something's very wrong." The doctor's voice said, "Let's get him back on the table and scan him." As I was pushing, I could hear my host coughing and struggling to breathe. I kept moving and pushing against the hard surface in front of me. The host screamed in pain every time as the hard surface made a loud cracking sound. I could feel the surface cracking more and getting weaker each time I pressed against it. My host began to move as his screams got louder. I then pushed my hardest as I broke through the hard surface. I heard screaming and felt the air against me as I growled. All the voice screamed it, and then one said, "Oh my God!" I moved around and crawled out of my host onto the floor. I ran across it into a small area and continued running through the darkness blindly, following the tunnels. I soon fell out of it into a large body of water. I searched around, moving through the water and back onto a hard surface, and soon found some organic material to feast on. As I begun consuming it, I could feel my body beginning to change and grow. Hour by hour, my body began to change. First, I grew arms and then legs, and my head began to increase in size, as I could also feel my skin hardening. After reaching full size, my urges began again, saying, "Increase the swarm." So I left where I was hiding and went out to find more prey. I ran through more tunnels, albeit very cautiously, as I could hear the sounds of potential prey moving about below me. I could hear one saying, "That thing that burst out of John, I know it came this way. I heard it in the ducts." I continued listening and heard clicking noises. Then strange pieces of metal began bursting through my tunnel as I could hear strange sounds. Whatever these metal things were must have been coming from the same source as the noise. I screeched and scurried off as I heard the prey following below me. It kept firing the same objects at me. It burst through the tunnel right below me, hitting me, and the tunnel collapsed, causing me to fall to the ground. As I got to my feet, the prey stared me down and said, "This is for John." I snarled and then quickly ran off, fleeing from him. As I ran, I could hear him behind me. I kept running and soon found a hole in the wall and used it to get away. I found myself outside as I looked over at a massive structure. I could sense there was possible prey nearby. As I followed towards it, I could tell it was all alone. So then I followed him into the massive structure. Once inside, my urges again said, Once inside, I could feel warmth as my urges began to say, "Increase the swarm. Build the hive." I then stalked the prey through a series of massive tunnels. In the shadows of the hallway, I crawled up the wall and across the ceiling. I saw the prey turn as he heard the sounds of my claws scraping against the metal and pipes. It stood looking back for a moment and then turned back around. As it began to go back down the hallway, I realized this was the perfect moment. So I crawled and leapt from the ceiling. Landing behind it, I pierced it with my tail. It began to scream in pain as I drug it down the hallway towards the source of the warmth. Once I found a suitable place, I began to secrete my resin, building a cocoon around the prey. I then left the structure in search of more prey and soon found a group of them approaching another immobile structure. Following them, they entered a room filled with eggs, so I stopped and waited for the eggs to hatch. The eggs soon gave birth to larvae, which leapt from their eggs, attacking the prey. The prey tried to fight back, but I soon left my comfortable hiding spots and attacked the prey, weakening them. so that the larvae would have the chance to implant their embryos as I did mine. One by one, each of the prey fell unconscious. I then began to drag them towards the warm structure where I had started to build the hive. As I watched over what I had built, another prey entered, and I heard it say, "Oh my God!" It also began to throw up at the sight of the hive, its weak stomach unable to fathom this. I approached it, and it fired a similar device at me as the one that had been fired at me earlier. I felt a piece of the strange metal pierce my arm. As I screamed and ran, I could hear it saying, "I got you, you son of a bitch." I ran deeper into the hive. It soon found me and cornered me, as I could feel my blood boil and sizzle from the wound. It approached me and pointed its device at me and said, "I got you now." But as it attempted to finish me, another drone lunged, and the prey screamed as it was mauled. I approached it, but the drone hissed at me, telling me that this was its prey. As I sat there and watched as it took its prey deeper into the hive, I could feel a strange sensation in my body. This was different. I was changing again, but to something else. First, my upper body grew with my arms, and then my legs began to grow as well. My tail then grew even longer, as I felt my head began to reshape into a large crest. Inside, I could feel everything begin to change. Before long, I could tell I was changing into the queen. After my change, I could sense every drone and egg near the hive. I then began to feel that it was time to lay eggs. My ovipositor began to grow from my body as I felt myself unable to move. I hissed at the nearby drones, telling them, "Increase the swarm." I watched as the drones ran from the hive. I looked all around and sensed all of my children growing inside their hosts. I then began to lay more eggs as more drones appeared, dragging fresh prey for my larvae. After laying eggs, I watched as more of my children burst from their hosts. The already grown drones returned with more hosts and began to continue building the hive. After what felt like an eternity of time, I watched as my drones roaming the hive began to hunt a group of prey above. The prey were looking at all the hosts inside the hive. My drones lie in wait above them. As the prey were examining one of the hosts, it woke and begged for them to kill it. Then one of my children burst through its chest. I heard the prey say, "Kill it!" One of them said, "Flamethrower, move!" It took the flamethrower and blasted my child with fire. I felt its pain, and as it screeched, I screamed. I then told my children, "Attack!" The first drone took one of them by surprise, causing its flamethrower to burn another. The burnt one fell, after which a large explosion occurred further, distracting the prey. The rest of my children followed suit, each pulling their targets into the darkness. The remaining prey fired their weapons at my children. I screamed as some of them were hit. I could hear some of the prey saying things like, "Let's rock!" as the sounds of the weapons began to fire everywhere. My drones did well to avoid them and took out quite a few of them. Though some drones were killed, they did their part in protecting the hive as the prey began to flee, one of them yelling, "Let's get the fuck out of here!" I kept watching as I could hear the sound of something big approaching. My children followed them towards it. As the prey entered the object, one of my children was hit, exploding, sending its blood splashing onto a prey close by, which burned him and caused its flamethrower to start a fire within the object. After the group of prey inside put out the fire, another one of my drones attempted to get inside. It hissed as it felt a cold piece of metal inside its mouth, and the prey said, "Eat this!" and fired it as everything went black.
I climbed out of the ashes of my old body. Reborn. I climbed to my feet and dusted myself off. I then looked up at Phoebe. "How am I ever gonna get used to that?" I muttered.
Please, Jonathan, You are fine.
I glared at the phoenix. She wasn't human. She didn't know how it felt having a very normal human body, a very normal human set of flesh, bones, and skin burn away, and then experience life in another form.
So, how was it?
Phoebe asked me. It was strange. I wasn't human, but I didn't think that whatever I was came from Earth. I do not want to see those things on Earth anytime soon, I told her, disgusted. Phoebe nodded at me. I then took a very long walk to clear my head, or to forget the fact that I was just related to an alien species that were trying to dominate, well, everything. If you enjoy the exploration of the multiverse segments of the Crown Matrix, then please make sure you check out the Author's Crown YouTube channel. The host is A Crown. He's the person who created, written, and narrated the exploration of the multiverse segments in the Crown Matrix. And he has a whole YouTube channel dedicated to his own audio drama stories. He's done some amazing stories and some awesome crossovers. Ever wondered what it'd be like if the Power Rangers ever crossed over with some of the most biggest horror characters like Jason Voorhees or Freddy Krueger? Yeah? Then the Author's Crown is the home for you. So make sure you go check it out to find what I just mentioned, but also some other fantastic tales. And do me a massive favour whilst you're over there. Subscribe!
What you have just listened to is a product created by the Three Ranger Bros Studio.
Hosted by three cosplaying fathers who
happen to be massive geeks of all sorts of fandoms.
They are Mark, the Red Cornish Ranger,
Cosplay Dude 637,
and Ty Tiger.
The studio covers different types of YouTube videos, TikToks, podcasts, and live streams.
If you wish to find out who cosplays who, the YouTube channels, the TikTok accounts, and the podcasts, and all of the other social media platforms,
please go to the 3rangerbrostudios.com.